Good afternoon, everyone. Hope things are well. Lots of positive Newcastle United transfers, and we talk about the possibility of one player coming into this football club yesterday. Already, you're talking about the possibility of two players coming in now. There's been very good news about our football club today on social media. To take you back to my video yesterday, of course, when you look into the reports that the Times put out, so Martin Hardy stated at the start of his article yesterday, Newcastle had agreed a £55 million bid for Antony Elanga from Nottingham Forest, and there's been a bit of confusion amongst journalists and I guess the sport media over the past 24 hours because, well, you look at this agreed bid and Sky Sports has said nothing. You look across social media, and while the Times have said that this bid's been accepted, you look elsewhere and almost nothing's been said. So I guess amongst fans, there's a bit of confusion, maybe a bit of worry perhaps towards this transfer. But the BBC Sport, if you wanted a different report, they've claimed that while Newcastle hasn't agreed that fee, they've said now that it is in its final stage. And I think across social media, we can all collectively agree, even in the Nottingham Forest side as well, that Elanga is going to complete this move. I'm fully convinced, in my personal opinion. I feel like this deal is going to go through. Newcastle and Forest, we're talking at the final stages now in terms of how the payment's going to be structured, the final margins of how they're going to get this transfer done. Some reports out there claim that on the player side of things still needs to be a little bit done. And then we look at other reports on the player side of things. Elanga wants to play for Newcastle. He's very happy about the possibility of moving to Newcastle. So there's a bit of confusion amongst journalists, but I fully expect over the next day, 2 days, that this deal is going to get completed. I think it will get sorted out. Newcastle returns to the training ground on Monday for pre-season. Eddie Howe is going to want players in for that first week of training. I think Elanga does join Newcastle, but if you remember my video yesterday, I did also make a promise. I said we've got a special video planned for Antony Elanga. I've got a few things I need to book and sort out in the background. Now, I'm just waiting for the final confirmation. I'm just waiting for the journalists to basically all agree with each other, and then we're going to head out and get some very special videos planned. So stay tuned and make sure you are subscribed. I'm not going to spoil it, but I've got a lot of things planned, so make sure you don't miss, because it's certainly going to be a bit of a mental video. But going back to Elanga, for some reason, Nottingham Forest fan pages have been lying about the transfer saga. We have one here that has stated that the BBC in Nottingham has spoken to Elanga himself, who has confirmed he wants to stay at Nottingham Forest and is currently negotiating a new contract. He's firmly denied links to Newcastle, stating that he's fully committed to Forest and excited to continue the journey at the City ground. The BBC themselves has responded to the post saying, to be clear, we haven't done an interview with Antony Elanga since the end of the season. They've even called out on this BS in social media. I don't know what's going on the Nottingham Forest side. I don't know why pages are just making up lies for the simple, I guess, pleasure of getting likes and reactions on social media. The literal BBC themselves has denied those claims. And when I look at Nottingham Forest fan videos, I've had a chance actually to hear from the Nottingham Forest side, because I wanted to know, in their point of view, what they felt like about Antony Elanga. Now, I'm a massive fan of Elanga. I said it in my video yesterday, I'm standing by it, and there's been quite mixed opinions amongst Newcastle fans, but I think he's a top quality sign. I think it's exactly what Eddie Howe needs, and we'll speak more about it in my special video towards Elanga, but he is someone that is going to take off in Newcastle. When you look at the stats, when you actually take opinion out of it and you look at the guy's stats, his assist for Chris Wood, actually the best one-to-one goal contributions. Of course, you look at Jacob Murphy assist to Isak. Elanga has more of that to Chris Wood, and not to disrespect Chris Wood because he is a top quality striker, but imagine Elanga putting those balls in for Isak. The amount of pace those two and Anthony Gordon will bring to the Premier League is just mental. They're incredibly quick, agile players that are just going to terrorise back lines. And I think it's exactly what Newcastle needs in terms of squad depth. I think he will take us to that next step. I'm a massive advocate for Antony Elanga, and I seriously believe in this guy. The Premier League assists across the last couple of seasons, beat like Saka, De Bruyne, you're talking Cole Palmer, some of the world's best players that play in the Premier League. Antony Elanga has better goal contributions than those players. He is a good player that will take Newcastle that next step further, and I think he's someone for the long foreseeable future is exactly what we need, and I'm very excited to see him coming into this football club. And before we talk about the next incoming potential sign at Newcastle United, Chelsea and Aston Villa have been fined from UEFA for breaching their financial fair play regulations. So to try and explain this, so the Premier League and UEFA has different laws, even though, of course, for example, us, we play in the Premier League and we play in the Champions League. So we have rules that we need to follow for UEFA and rules we need to follow for the Premier League. And UEFA's rules tend to be a bit more strict. Hence why Chelsea's been fined, Villa's been fined. Shock horror, the two teams that have sought their women's teams to themselves have now been fined from UEFA. This dodgy BS crap again. Something we need to keep an eye on, and the fact that UEFA is the one that's fining these clubs, and not even the Premier League. The Premier League's just like, no, you can do what you want, but UEFA has at least took a little bit of money off those two clubs. But again, as we mentioned in these videos, and we dedicate some videos towards these topics, but just keep an eye on these Premier League clubs because they're always going to find loopholes and always going to look for a way around the back door to try and get themselves an extra money. And Newcastle is maybe the club now that probably should be trying to do the same thing, but of course, one rule for Newcastle and one rule for our teams. I feel like if Newcastle was to look for a loophole, they would come down a bit harder on us, in my personal opinion. But let me know your opinion down below. Is this a load of shite like usual? Fabrizio Romano has posted before that Giorgio Scavlini, of course, the 21-year-old Atlanta centre-half or Atlanta defender, because he can play across the entire back line, has been heavily linked to Newcastle United. Newcastle has him on his shortlist, and Newcastle has made an approach to sign him from Atlanta around the 30 million euro margin, which, to be honest, for a 21-year-old lad that I think with the potential you guys talk about is someone that can reach a serious height at Newcastle, is available at a good price. And the reason why he's quite cheap is because, again, he has a bit of a dodgy shoulder. ACL was torn last season, so his price has dropped in valuation. But give you some evidence at Newcastle. Tino Livramento joined the football club coming off the back of a torn ACL, and just look at where he is now. So for the money that you're talking about, a player that can play across the entire back line and the defensive midfielder, so you can play essentially in 4 different areas on the pitch. A player who back in 2023 has also stated in an interview, for me, the Premier League is one of the best leagues there is. For the intensity, once in my career, I don't even know when, but I like to play there. That's what he said a couple of years ago about the prospect of joining a Premier League club. So it's definitely something in the back of his mind that he wants to do in his career at some point. And it seems now Newcastle being the most intense and the most advanced on potentially bringing the player in out of any club out there currently, seems like a potential move that could happen in this window. But again, especially at an early stage like this in a player, all it takes is a different Premier League club to knock on the door and to enter Chelsea. All it takes is for a different Premier League club to come in, enter, and then to start their talks themselves. Newcastle could face a fierce competition with this one, but of course, being the first team that's went in there for a team that has also shown that a couple of years ago, Sandro Tonali joined the football club, very young Italian player, of course had the unfortunate betting scandal in the background. So even after his ban, came back and just look how good Tonali's been over the past 12 months. I almost feel like, especially for a different young Italian player wanting to come into the Premier League, you almost look at the Tonali example and go, well, if Sandro can perform like this for Newcastle, he can do so well at the football club, especially considering what's going on behind the scenes with him. Surely Giorgio will look at this and go, hang on, I can do the same. I want to come at this football club and do well. So definitely, in my opinion, feels like a sign Newcastle could pull off. It's one where we clearly want the player, and judging by how social media has talked about him, a player that would take Newcastle at the next level. So I'm excited with this one. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't watched much of the guy in real life, but from what all of you have stated about him, certainly feels like he's going to be one that is going to take Newcastle very far, hopefully in the likes of the Champions League. But I'm personally a fan of this sign, especially with his versatility at his young age. But walking away from this video, we are back in 2 days. It feels so weird saying that, but Newcastle is back on Monday. Pre-season journey begins as we return to the training ground ahead of the 2025-26 Champions League campaign. I am so excited. I can't wait to see the lads back. I can't wait to see what Newcastle does. And while we are, of course, going to be preparing for our pre-season trips, behind the scenes, in terms of transfers, we are also preparing to bring some names in. Antony Elanga, 24 to 48 hours we're expecting good news. So stay tuned, stay updated, and make sure you are ready, because once that good news comes in, could potentially be tomorrow, that video, but I don't want to promise anything. But let me know down in the comments section, what do you think about Antony Elanga? What do you think about Giorgio Scavlini? Do you think these are players that are going to help Newcastle for the foreseeable future, or are you someone that's perhaps a bit sceptical and want this to go for a different option? So please do let me know your opinions. Take care, and we will see you all in the next one.